A huge win for Labour, as you said, another brick back in the red wall, and Chris Webb is the new MP here. It was apparent very early on that he was going to win comfortably. The mounds of votes piling up in the Labour tray as the night went on. 10,825 altogether. For the Tories, it was a shocker of a result, just 3,218. Speaking to me after the declaration, Chris Webb told LBC it's hugely significant.
People wanted change, and they did that with their feet tonight. People are fed up with this government, they're fed up with being let down. So many are worse off than they were 14 years ago. They've seen a massive decline in public services in Blackpool, and they want change, and that's what they voted for.
The general vibe from the Conservative members here was almost a bit blasé, though, an expectation that they would lose heavily because of the misdemeanours of Scott Benton that brought this by-election about. The feeling was very much that this was always going to happen and things will be fine, but the swing is enormous, 26% from the Tories to Labour. That is the third largest in a by-election since the war. Won't be lost on people either that Reform finished just 117 votes behind them in third. Here's their candidate, Mark Butcher.
This is a record for Reform UK, 19%. It's an amazing result, really, and it's a massive statement, isn't it? This is an incredible result for Reform UK. We're a serious party with serious policies, serious people in the party, and we mean business. What we need to do now is focus heavily on the general election. And look, we were so close here. I think we can take the Tories in the general election. Of course, given more time, I'm sure we're going to do a lot better.
To add to the Tory misery, up the road in Cumbria, the Police and Crime Commissioner has switched from Conservative to Labour in these elections as well. And this all tied in with what the new MP here has said, that people want change and now they want a general election to follow. Let's go now to my LBC colleague, Alan Zazinski, at the Count in Hartlepool.
Thanks, Chris. Groundbreaking is how Labour are describing their gain here, and as proof that Keir Starmer has changed the party, as he pledged to do when they suffered that crushing by-election defeat right here 3 years ago. They needed 2 seats to gain control of this council for the first time since 2019. They won 9, and Brenda Harrison is their new leader.
We have surpassed expectations because of his leadership. And the way that the party has changed over the last few years. We are getting people to regain, particularly Labour voters that went away from us, to regain that trust.
And also watching the results come in was Jill Mortimer, the very MP elected for the Conservatives in that 2021 by-election.
Disappointing night. It really makes me laugh when I hear Labour saying they're going to be positive change in Hartlepool. That was my line from 21. They'd had 57 years of Labour, and what we've shown since 2021 is the positive change that we've brought into the town.
The voters here tonight, though, clearly don't agree with you.
Well, let's see what the votes say for Ben tomorrow from this town, because tomorrow's another day.
And Ben Houchin will find out if he's managed to hold on to his position as Tees Valley Mayor, despite how much support Labour appear to have won in these parts in around midday.
LBC's Alan Zazinski reporting from Hartlepool. Prior to that, you heard from LBC's Chris Chambers, who was at Blackpool South. Now, let's get an overview of the local elections then in England. In the studio with me now, LBC's reporter Henry Riley, who's been watching the results come in overnight. What are the highlights and the lowlights you want to bring to everyone's attention? Henry, morning.
Well, Nick, morning. Some of the key seats, I think, firstly in the east, we've also got North East Lincolnshire, Rushmore in Hampshire and Redditch in Worcestershire. Starting with Redditch, a disaster for the Conservatives. Labour have won 21 out of the 27 seats, gaining 10, taking control from the Conservatives. Now, this is a real bellwether seat. It's a seat that's always been won by the governing party since it was created back in the 1990s. The local MP, Rachel McLean, was actually on LBC. She's the deputy chair of the Conservative Party as well. She was pretty frank when she spoke with LBC's Ian Dale that she was in trouble.
We don't always get a good reception on the doorstep. We don't. And I don't think any politician does.
The polls show the Conservative Party at 18%, only 3% ahead of Reform UK. Now, I have never seen the Conservative Party in such dire straits. Have you?
Me? Oh, no. I've only ever seen the party do much better than this. We're doing badly in the polls. It would be a miracle if we did well tonight. I mean, there's plenty of polls that predict I'm going to lose this seat.
And to remind you, she's the deputy chair of the Conservative Party.
Did she know she was on national radio?
Yeah, she didn't know. I think she may have misspoke. On to Rushmore in Hampshire, equally as terrible for the Tories. Aldershot, the home of the British Army, another gain for Labour. They gained the authority from the Conservatives when really only a third of the council was up for election. Also notable that the Tories lost control of North East Lincolnshire Council, which has been pretty solidly theirs over the past few years. On to Essex and that sort of east area. Firstly, Labour making gains and the Tories losing seats in Southend and in Colchester. Labour will be pretty buoyed. They won Thurrock. The Conservative Party lost 12 seats there. A good result for Labour. Lastly, though, I think the only glimmer of good news for the Conservatives is Harlow. Labour very much hoping to win.
Also in Essex, but neighbouring Thurrock, of course.
Yes.
Not just up the road,
Of course, Labour very much hoping to win that. Keir Starmer made 2 key visits, including earlier this week, went to the local football club. Rob Halfon, the local MP, very popular. He's standing down at the general election, Conservative MP. For the past 40 years, that seat's been won by the governing party. Labour hoping to gain it, although I think the Conservatives, they won it by 1 seat, Nick. Rob Halfon may be overstating it. He's just tweeted, "This is the greatest comeback since Lazarus."
Henry Riley reporting. I sense we'll hear more from you through the course of the morning. Let's go to LBC's political editor, Natasha Clark, to interpret what this means nationally. Where do you want to start with, Natasha? Morning to you.
Morning, Nick. Yes, so the question that I'm starting with today is, are Labour doing well enough to form that decisive victory come a general election, whenever it might come? And the answer from all of the overnight results so far is yes. Obviously, decisive wins in places like Thurrock, Rushmore, some traditional Tory areas as well, and swing areas as well, like Redditch. Obviously, that huge Blackpool South by-election is going to be a big win for them. It's a huge swing as well, the third biggest Tory to Labour swing since the war, and in Hartlepool they also did better than expected as well. So that's another big thing for them, as well as Henry keeping an eye on on BDI on the east of England as well. Pollsters say that is such a good bellwether for where they need to win if they're going to win that general election with a big majority, like all the polls at the moment are pointing to.
Talk to the listeners about the area such as Bolton. What's happened there, do you think, Natasha?
So Bolton overnight, the Greens and Independents have really been taking chunks out of Labour's votes. Bolton is an area we would expect to be solidly Labour, but however, we think that it may be because of Keir Starmer's stance on the Israel-Gaza conflict, which is eating into their votes. So Independents and Greens taking some of those seats off them. And there's some analysis that's coming around showing that Labour have really lost a fair few votes in traditionally Muslim areas as well. And obviously, Nick, you know your interview where he got into a real muddle over that Israel-Gaza conflict, had such ripples in some of the Muslim population there. Apparently, we are trying to track this leaflet down. Apparently, there's been an independent leaflet where they actually mentioned our LBC and your LBC interview on that leaflet in Oldham, an independent candidate pointing that out. So not fantastic news for Labour in some parts.
Should have stood in Oldham, shouldn't I?
This
is where my future. Just to explain to the listeners, I don't know about you, Natasha, and you're very, very, very much younger than me, but it is a bit frustrating that we have to now have these counts strung over probably the next day and a half. There used to be that we would pretty much try and plough through as many as you possibly could. And I know it means people staying up through the night and into the early hours, but there is a sense of disappointment as sort of only half the story. Is that fair?
Yeah, it's not even a third of the story, I don't think.
Is it not?
We're not there yet, Nick. And yes, it will drag on over the weekend. Now, I think the real reason for that is just council budgets, because you have to pay people more to count overnight. So that's probably the reason why. And yes, we're not expecting to hear from those big areas, the 2 big mayoralties that the Tories are.
Well, this is the one I was going to finish with. We won't hear about London, we won't hear about Birmingham, we won't hear about Ben Houchin up in Teesside.
Exactly, yeah. So really, obviously, we're trying to shape the narrative, and we don't really have all of the results yet. So it's going to be impossible. And obviously, the Conservatives want to try and pin their hopes and their narrative around those 2 big wins, but we're not going to have them at all in the next few hours. So yes, it's going to be really, really difficult as well. But the top lines are so far, the Tories are still down more than about 100 seats, Labour up around 50 or so. The second question everyone's going to be asking today, and maybe we can't even ask it today, is Rishi Sunak, are the Tories doing badly enough that he is going to face that leadership challenge to his authority? Now, at the moment, obviously, it doesn't feel like it, but like I say, I just think we're too early to tell on any of that yet. So yes, watch this space.